Hello everyone, welcome to Hemmeters and Helpers. On this show, we will interview the people behind the scenes at Hemmeter Elementary.
Hello, Hemmeter's Hidden Helpers, and today we are going to interview Nancy Castaldo.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you for this interview.
Thank you for coming. Now tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a children's author, and I write all kinds of books, but mostly books about the planet, mostly books about nature and wildlife. And for many of my books, I also take the photographs. There are two here on the table that I took the photographs for, Beastly Brains and Back from the Brink. But I did not take pictures for this book about Nellie Bly. But I love to write and I love to do research.
Okay, can you tell us where you work?
Writers have the special ability to be able to work at all different places. So I have an office that's in my house, and the nice thing about that is having an office in my house, I can bring my dog to work every day. He keeps me company while I write. But very often I also am doing my research outside of my office. So sometimes I'm doing research in the field with scientists, and sometimes I'm doing it in a library. So I kind of work in many different places, wherever my computer is.
What inspired you to become an author?
Well, I didn't always want to be an author. When I was young, I wanted to be a veterinarian. But as I went on into school, I realized I didn't want to be a veterinarian, and I really loved to write. But I loved science, and I loved animals, and I loved taking pictures. I loved being outdoors. And being a writer, you could do all of those things. So that's the most fun part, is that I can be out in the field with scientists and learn a lot. I can do research. I can do writing, and also work at home. So that's pretty neat too.
All right, can you tell us your favorite book and why it's your favorite book?
It's always a tricky thing because you know what, as writers, all of our books are sort of like our babies, like our best friends, because we spend so much time with them. So it's very hard for me to pick a favorite. I love them all in different ways. So I loved Beastly Brains because it was so much fun to research, and I got to go to many different places for it. And Back from the Brink I loved because it was a book all about really positive stories about the environment, and I really wanted to write about some happy things about the environment, success stories. So I love all my books, and I really can't pick a favorite.
What do you like about your job, and what are some challenges?
Well, I love meeting my readers. That's one of my favorite things about my job. My other favorite thing about my job is doing a lot of the research because I get to learn a lot. And I love being out with scientists and learning about all these different animals. So those are I think the two favorite things about my job. And challenges, there's also some challenges that go along with it. Sometimes I work on a book and it really doesn't become a book. It just becomes research. Sometimes I do a lot of research and I find, yeah, it's not all there for a book. So sometimes that can be challenging, and sometimes it's hard to find the right expert. But for the most part, it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy learning about all the different things and meeting my readers and writing stories that I think are fun to read and informative.
Can you tell us what goes through your mind as you're writing a book?
Well, every time I write a book, I have to think like a scientist. I have to ask questions, and I have to find answers. Whether that's about Nellie Bly, who traveled around the world, or whether it's about an animal in Beastly Brains. So all of those are like, it's like a treasure hunt of questions that need to be answered.
What education do you need for your job?
Well, there's not a particular thing to be a writer. I studied science for a long time, and that's what helps me to understand what the scientists are saying. But you don't need a specific class to do that. So I took science classes when I was in college, and then I got a master's degree later on in children's literature, so I could understand more about children's books and the history of children's books. But anybody could be a writer. You don't need to have a specific degree to do that, which is kind of cool. And you can write about all these different topics. You can become an expert in anything you want to write. And fiction's like that too. I write nonfiction, so it's good for me to have those skills. But you can write fiction and just make them up in your head, and you can be a 4th grader or a 5th grader and still be a writer.
Can you tell us who your favorite author is? It could be yourself or somebody else.
I'm not going to take the easy way out and say myself. Of course, I like reading my own books, but I really enjoy reading a lot of different types of books. So I have some favorite adult authors. I have like John Steinbeck, and who wrote a lot of different books, and books like The Great Gatsby. The author of The Great Gatsby is one of my favorites. But then I have a lot of kid authors that I love. I love Catherine Applegate. She's one of my favorites. And in fact, a lot of teachers combine My Beastly Brains book with her book about Ivan, who was a great ape. And I love Elliot Schreffer's books. He writes a lot about animals too. So I like a lot of different authors. Hard to pick a favorite because I like to read about so many different topics.
What had been the most difficult book to write?
Let's see, I wrote a book a while ago, 2 books as a matter of fact, that were difficult in different ways. One was about space, about the universe, and that was the only book that I could not travel to the destination that I was writing about. I couldn't travel to Mars, I couldn't be an astronaut. I was able to talk to those type of people, but I couldn't visit the place. So that had its own challenges. The other one was a book that I wrote called Keeping Our Earth Green. And it focused on a lot of different environmental issues that were kind of tough. And I had to try to find ways that we could help in each case. So that was a little bit more challenging because it wasn't particularly happy topics I was writing about, which is one of the reasons why I wrote Back from the Brink, because it focuses on success stories. And I wanted to really focus on ways that we can all make a difference and help. And that's what that was about.
Have you ever had to rewrite the book?
Well, every time I write a book, I work with my editor, and my editor helps me through a process called revision. And revision is when I make the sentences and the structure better, like your teacher does. So it may be taking out a section of the book, or adding a section to the book, or changing things around, or even just changing sentences. So I haven't had to write an entire book over, but I have done a lot of revision on my books. In fact, every book needs revision, because you need to pick the right words. I did have to go back into a book that was already written and ready to go to press, which was the book on space. Because when I wrote the book, Pluto was still classified as a planet. And then scientists decided to change that classification. And I had to go back into the chapter on planets and rewrite that whole chapter to talk about that reclassification of little Pluto.
Have you ever been turned down by a publisher, and how many times have you been?
Too many to count. All authors are turned down, even the ones that write the most books, because for many different reasons. Sometimes it's because a publisher doesn't find that particular subject fits with what they want to publish. Sometimes they have a book that's too similar. So that changes. all the time. So sometimes one publisher may not want a story, but another publisher might find it's a perfect story for them. So I don't even know how many times, countless, because each time you write a book, it may not fit with what they want. But fortunately, you get a lot of acceptances too. So sometimes there's the rejections, and sometimes there's the acceptances. There's a balance.
What book are you most proud of writing?
It's tough to be focused on one book because I love all my books. The one that took the most time for me to write was the book on seeds. But I'm proud of all my books because I've had fun with all of them. I enjoy the books that I've been able to photograph as well as write because it's another element to creating the books that's fun. So those books I'm especially proud of, especially when somebody looks at the book and opens it and says, wow, these are wonderful photographs. It's another fun thing to add. So I love them all though, because they're all like little babies.
Well, then, is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Well, you know, we writers have a lot of time that we write. We don't get to always talk so much to our readers, so we really love to hear what our readers love about our books so that we can continue. And I'm going to ask you guys a question. Is there something special about reading nonfiction that you enjoy about not just my books, but what are some of the things that you like to read about in nonfiction, or what are some of the things that you enjoy when you see a book of nonfiction? What do you think? Oh, throwing this at you, huh? Do you like books with a lot of photographs, with a lot of facts? What are some of the things that you like to read?
I like learning the new facts in a book, in a nonfiction book, and I also like seeing pictures of what's happening. I like learning new facts about different types of science and things about the world.
Well, thank you guys. I have enjoyed being interviewed by you both, and I know that you are going to have some fun interviews coming up too. So I'm really happy to be here at your school today and share some of my books with you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. See you next time on Hemmeter's Hidden Helpers.